Holy crap, you're him. It's great what you're doing. The way you're cleaning up this place.
What are those posters supposed to be for?
Just trying something out, you know? Spreading word about you, what you're doing. Which one do you like?
Since this guy is gonna hang those up anyway, I might as well decide how people should view me. Do I want them to love me? Or fear me?
Personally, I tell them not to hang up any posters. Howdy, folks. So, got another installment of Gameolgy for you guys, and this is going to be a one-off video because whereas, open world game design, that's a very broad topic. Morality in games is something that can be applied to a variety of different genres, so rather than do a whole series on it, I thought I'd just limit it to one video here. So anyway, morality in gaming. So basically what that refers to is any system in a video game where, it can make choices that, have moral consequences. And now, that might seem like a very odd thing to have in a video game because, a lot of people just play video games as an escape from reality, just, fight evil, do all that good stuff. But having a morality system in a video game can actually do a lot for the experience because one of the best things to do in a video game is to be able to roleplay, and you can't do that if you are limited to very specific choices. So having morality in a video game, I feel doesn't necessarily make a game good or bad, but there are certain ways to do morality in gaming correct, and there are ways to do it wrong. So when I say wrong, I can't really think of any situations where a morality system in a video game has really had detrimental effects on the overall experience. There are certainly some video games that have moral choices as essentially just an afterthought, but it's very rare I can think of a game that asks you to do something that's just so abhorrently wrong that it actually becomes offensive. I'm sure there are plenty of video games that do stuff like that, but they probably are just indie games that, normal people aren't going to be playing, probably just made by someone who probably does have some issues, but, this isn't supposed to be a discussion between what's right and what's wrong. It's just more a discussion of, how to properly implement a moral system into a game. So, first of all, in regards to what I was talking about earlier, how some games that have moral choices, the moral system doesn't necessarily ruin the game, but it doesn't necessarily enhance anything either. And the prime example I think of in that regard would probably be BioShock. The big moral choice in this game is whether or not you choose to free the little sisters in the game or harvest them for your own benefit, because really the little sisters are the only people in Rapture who you are capable of saving in any capacity. And this is often referred to as a moral choice, but I really don't view it as such because the moral question is very simple. Are you a decent human being who's willing to stick their neck out to save an innocent child, or are you a sadistic individual who likes to murder little children? So, every time I play BioShock, I have never bothered to harvest the little sisters, outside of one occasion where I did so, just to see what happened. And after that, I never felt the need to do it again. So that's a poor example of a moral system in a game. Another system that doesn't use the morality system terribly well is Infamous, believe it or not, which might sound a little crazy since I am using music from that game. It's what I opened with, and I've always spoke highly of Infamous. But the karmatic system in the game is pretty lousy when you get down to it. And the primary issue here isn't that, there is an immoral choice. There is. It has more to do with the fact that the choices are just so black and white. It's very clear what the right answer is. It's very clear what the wrong answer is. And because of that, you don't really have to put a whole lot of thought into the moral choice. Question is, how would you make it better? Well, it's actually very simple. Take this instance, for example. I talked about this during my live stream. In this situation, the moral choice is, do you step forward into the crowd and attack the police, maintain the quarantine, and have them all come after you, or do you attack them from within the crowd to take the heat off of you and Zeke, but then put all the brunt of the police's wrath on the crowd? That situation is really complicated because either way, you are picking a fight with the police, and you're also leading people to their death. I mean, people who watch my stream, they know what happens in this scenario. And something like this is very easy to fix. You just need to have more than two choices. What I always said should have happened in this scenario is, in addition to the two choices you were given, you should have had the option to just walk away. You realize that there's no way through the situation that isn't going to involve innocent people getting hurt. So because of that, you just walk away from it, realizing that it would be better for everyone if you did nothing. So having choices like that, choices that make you think, that's when a morality system really shines. And it also helps if these moral choices are extremely complicated. And the next example I want to talk about is a really good example of that. So one of my all-time favorite games is a horror game called The Suffering. Now what this game is about is you play as a death row inmate who is trapped on a prison island as a lot of supernatural stuff starts to occur, and you work to try to escape the island. And as you're making your way to the end of the game, you'll encounter other inmates and guards alike who are all facing the horrors as you are. And how you interact with these people affects the outcome of the game. So, for example, in this situation right here, you come across a guard who very clearly cannot be saved. He's on death's door. So your moral choice there is, do you put him out of his misery, or do you just let him suffer? And that's a tough choice because, we often look at killing as a major ethical dilemma, and people always say that, killing is wrong. And it is. I don't want people to get the wrong idea there. But the problem here is that the right thing to do isn't just end the guy's suffering. Because if you just walk away, then he's basically just going to spend the rest of his life, which isn't going to last much longer, in complete agony. It's a disturbing picture to paint, but again, it's something that just makes you think a little bit harder, and this is the kind of stuff you need to do if you are making a game that has moral choices in it. Another good example is the Red Dead Redemption series, and part of the reason I think this one works so well is that you have so much freedom in regards to how you conduct yourself. You can, of course, play as I play, Night of the Wild West, defending the innocents, all that good stuff. Or you can just play as a complete outlaw, run it right into town, you steal from the bank, you pay off your bounty, and then you go spend your ill-gotten gains, stuff like that. And one thing I really like about Red Dead Redemption is that how you play the game, it doesn't necessarily change anything. People often say that if you're going to have a morality system in a video game, then it should affect the ending of the game or the certain events, kind of like how it does in Mass Effect. But in Red Dead Redemption, you kind of notice that that doesn't really happen. Whether you play the game as a Knight of the Wild West or a vicious outlaw, the story never changes. But what's brilliant about Red Dead Redemption is that while the story itself doesn't change, how you perceive everything in the story does. So, for example, the agents who are holding John Marston's leash in this game, with those characters, if you play the game like I do, then they are very antagonistic. They are basically just harassing a man who, yes, did some really bad things in his life, but made the choice to stop and is now trying to just live out the rest of his life in peace. But if you play the game as a vicious outlaw, then all of a sudden the agents become sympathetic. And that is consistent throughout the entirety of Red Dead Redemption. That's part of why it's so brilliant. And damn, I was gonna go somewhere else with that. What was I gonna say? But yeah, it just happens so subtly, and the way the story is written is in support of that. With Red Dead Redemption, with John Marston as a character, like, they're very vague about all the stuff he did with the Vanderling gang. You know, before the events of the game, they acknowledged that John did some pretty abhorrent stuff while he was with them, but they're very vague about what he did. But, you know, before all this started, he was also just living the life of a humble ranger. So that's good because no matter what the player does, it makes sense for John as a character. He's a man who is capable of great heroics, but at the same time, he's a man who's capable of great violence as well. So no matter what route you take, it makes sense for John. So, as a result, the morality of Red Dead Redemption ends up being very subtle, and what it really reflects is not just your perception of people around you, but, you know, how other people receive you. If you play the game as a Knight of the Wild West, people will request your help or stuff, they'll give you discounts at stores, occasionally people will show up to reward you. But if you play the game with low honor, you know, be a vicious outlaw, people will be far less willing to accommodate you when you're in town. And you also have bounty hunters coming at you pretty frequently. So it's not a fun way to play the game, I guess you could say. But there is something that all these games have in common in regards to how they handle their morality system. And that is that they all have a meter. And to me, having a meter in any game that has a morality system is probably the worst thing you can do, because rather than, you know, making you question whether or not your choices are right and wrong, you know, as you should, because one of the hardest things about doing the right thing is that you sometimes don't know if you are doing the right thing, especially if you're doing your morality system right, because, you know, the choices are going to be very complicated. There's always going to be this nagging feeling that what you chose to do was the wrong choice. By having a meter that tells you what you did is right, what you did is wrong, it sort of ruins that for you. What I think is better to do in a game where morality is a big part is to make it completely subtle. And I can't think of any set of games that do it better than the Telltale series, you know, Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, stuff like that. In these games, all the choices you make in the game play a big part in not just how events unfold, but also in how the characters in the game react to you. For example, in The Wolf Among Us, if, you know, you actually try to be a good cop who is, you know, has everyone's best interest in mind and is trying to do right by everyone else, people will be more willing to help you out in the various situations that you get into. That makes it easier to obtain information and in the like. But if you act in a more violent manner, people are going to be afraid of you, and because of that, they'll be less inclined to help you if you come looking for help. These games just do a really good job of presenting you with these really tough decisions, which is, you know, this is how I feel a morality system should be done in gaming. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about moral choices when we play Undertale this Saturday. So be sure you tune in for that. But that's my thought on morality systems in gaming. If you have your own opinions on it or how you think they should be implemented in games, please leave it in the comments. I'd be interested to hear about it. Anyway, that's going to do it for this installment of Gameology, guys, and I'll see you next time.